wanted to talk to the sentiment that's out there about our housing market and make some clarifications and talk about what I think is going on. There's obviously a sentiment that our housing market is crazy. How's it going, guys? I'm Christopher McGee. I am the owner of Halcyon Real Estate. We are affiliated with the Keller Williams Market Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Today is Monday, the 13th of October, 2025, and this is the Numbers and the Nuance where you come weekly in order to know exactly what Utah's right now market is looking like. I'm constantly looking at last week's numbers on the MLS. I'm plotting those on a chart so that you can see how they trend over time and give you a solid idea, not just from one variable, but from many variables, overall what our housing market is looking like here in Utah. So like always, I'll give you my nuanced opinion of what's going on, and then I will show you those numbers and those charts so you can make decisions for yourself. I believe we make the best decisions with the best data. Let's look into it. All right, you know what? This week I wanted to talk to the sentiment that's out there about our housing market and make some clarifications and talk about what I think is going on. There's obviously a sentiment that our housing market is crazy. And I just wanted to make the clarification that the pain we feel in our market right now is not because anything odd is happening in how our market functions right now. It's not because there's anything wonky. It's not because it's a strong seller's market or a strong buyer's market right now. The pain we feel in Utah's housing market right now exists because the housing market as a whole tends to exist in a bracket above where most people are making money. In Salt Lake County, average income right now is about $131,500. And median income is a little less than that. It's about $94,400 per year. And so let's take the median and let's compare it to what a median home in Utah costs according to just last week's number. That's $535,000. So the question becomes, can a household that makes $94,000 and change in a year reasonably afford a home that costs $535,000? Well, if a median household is bringing in $94,000 and change, then we're bringing in about $78,000 a month. And given the fact that nobody's going to pre-approve you for a home unless you're able to spend like 30 to 35% and no more of your monthly income on your house payment, on your housing, that means that your monthly mortgage payments, once you factor in homeowners insurance and property taxes, once you factor all that in, we're looking at about $2,500 a month. That's what a household earning the median income should be paying, and not much more than that, if at all. But depending on what a household puts down on a house that costs $535,000, the mean right now, or not the mean, but the median, importantly, depending on what they put down, that'll cost anywhere from about $2,600 a month to $3,100 or more a month. And what that all translates to is that a median home price is only going to be affordable barely for a household making median household income if they have about $100,000 or more to make as a down payment. What is the math on that? Yeah, $100,000 on a $535,000 home, that's just barely over 5% down. That's at the edge of what's going to be doable. So to make it properly affordable, one of a few things would need to happen. Either we're making a down payment of more like $150,000, or the mortgage interest rate is closer to 4.5%, or we're just buying less home. A home more along the lines of $450,000, significantly lower than the median house price in Utah right now. That's the pain in our market right now. The market is functioning totally normal, just at a bracket above where most of us are. And so what needs to happen? Well, a number of things need to happen. The first thing that needs to happen is that our housing inventory needs to stay high while demand stays subdued, so that our supply-demand equilibrium stays a little bit heavier on the supply side. And that will encourage prices to come down over time as hopefully our incomes are coming up to meet it. And what's the one lever you can pull to ensure that that happens? It's interest rates. It's to make sure interest rates don't get too low too soon. Because if interest rates drop too low too soon, the number of people who've been wanting a home can suddenly afford a home more easily. They rush the market. There's a bunch of demand that takes big bites out of the supply, and now we've got lower supply and higher demand again, and we're in the same problem problem that we created for ourselves in 2020 and 2021. So while we don't love these interest rates being as high as they have been the last few years, they are the one thing keeping our housing market from continuing off into the stratosphere in terms of pricing. What else needs to happen if you're trying to buy a home? Well, if you're trying to buy a home, the best thing you can probably do is have another home to sell. For the overwhelming majority of people who have been buying a home, the case has been that they sold a home and then they were able to buy one. And so if you own a home and you've been living in it long enough, you've got enough equity in the home, then selling that home is going to give you that $150,000 plus that you need in order to be able to make the next home purchase. That's why getting into the housing market as soon as possible is highly encouraged for anybody who's paying attention to what happens with finances in general. If you're in the housing market, then you're riding the wave of what's happening to the housing market and your equity comes up with it, while your monthly mortgage payment stays whatever it was when you bought it. Okay, but you and I can't control supply and demand, and you and I can't control whether or not we do happen to have a home to sell right now if you want to buy a home. But what we can control is how much money do I make and how much money do I save. That's something that needs to be addressed in my personal life, right? In your personal life. Make more money, save more money. Next thing that needs to happen is making more money and saving more money while waiting for these interest rates to come down. I don't believe they will stay over 6% forever. And they've been on a downward trajectory for the overwhelming majority of this year. They've come down from over 7.25, down to 6.25. And frankly, I don't want them to go down that fast into next year. I'd rather see them hover around where they are right now so that the first point I made can remain in place, so that we lean a little bit heavier in supply than in demand, in that supply and demand equilibrium. And of course, the other thing we can do if we're in the market to buy a home right now is to simply buy less home. Homes used to be mass produced at like 1,200, 1,500 square feet, and full-on 4-person, 5-person, 6-person families used to live in homes like that, and we've just become accustomed to thinking we need a 2,500 minimum square foot home just because that's what everybody has. We don't need to keep up with everybody, we just need to do what's gonna make sense for us. All right, so I just wanted to put that out there today. Our housing market functions perfectly normal. It just kind of left us behind en masse. And I just wanted to create that clarification. I wanted you to know that I see it, I'm aware of it, I'm experiencing it with you. I totally get it. Now let's look at the last week's numbers. All right, you guys, here's where things are in the Utah housing market as of the 13th of October, 2025. Our current inventory stands at 13,697. That's up from last week, and actually this hits a new high for inventory this year. We do expect it to seasonally peak this month and then begin to decline through the winter. Last week's average days on market jumped up significantly to 73 days. That's trending moderately up. I don't anticipate it to run away at the trajectory that you see of the last 4 or 5 points of data there. I anticipate more of what the current trend line looks like into the winter. Last week's average list price came to $760,703. That's up from the previous week and trending up. If average list prices keep their current pattern, it will drop again next week or the following week and then start to creep up again. That's kind of been the pattern. 3 or 4 weeks of trending up and then 1 or 2 weeks of a drop and then 3 or 4 weeks trending up again, and it continues that pattern recently, so we'll see what happens. Now, last week's average sold price came to $743,809. That's also a significant jump up from where it was last week, but it follows the same trajectory, which means the difference between average list price and average sold price comes in right next to where it was last week and keeping up with the way it's been at $16,894 in the buyer's favor, selling for less than they are listing for. Also important, as I said, the median sold price is coming in at $535,000 for this last week. Up from the previous week, up from where it's previously been, still $200,000 less than average sold price. Importantly, more people have an experience at that 535 than they do at that 740 whatever. Now, last week there were 547 homes that sold, and that's down a jump from the previous week. This is trending moderately down, which we do expect as winter approaches. But it's the same thing with the number of homes currently under contract. contract, 4,801. That's down from the previous week, trending down again as we expect seasonally. Last week, the number of price reductions that hit homes on the market came to 1,489. That's down from the previous week and trending moderately down. Last week, the number of listings that were either canceled, expired, or withdrawn from the MLS came to 402. That's down after last week's expected first report of the month spike. And finally, interest rates for a 30-year fixed rate conventional loan are at a national average of about 6.32%. That's down from last week and continuing a trajectory down. And that's it for this week, guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to hit me in the comments. I'm gonna be happy to respond. I look for them. As always, if you or anybody you know is looking to sell or buy a home here in Utah, especially in Davis County, Salt Lake County, where I live, or in Utah County, just south of me, I hope you're comfortable reaching out. I'm gonna be happy to work with you. I think you know that I know this market like the back of my hand, and I'm gonna be buttoned up, a professional. I'll get the job done, and in a way that reduces your anxiety around the whole process. It's not fun to move, I get it. And of course, as always, if this is the kind of info that you want to wrap your head around and keep your head wrapped around it, perhaps while you're looking forward to a move coming up, then you won't find a better way than to hit that subscribe and stay up on it with me from week to week. Thank you, as always, for watching this week, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye, bye-bye.